It is July 30th, 2020. This is Roqe. Well, for people of Iranian descent living outside of Iran, how does the way we perceive ourselves mesh with the way we are perceived? More specifically, is it time to break the taboo and start having the conversations around being people of color? And maybe there is a larger community of minorities that we ought to identify as our brothers and sisters, since we are inevitably also seen as the other. Constitutional law professor, best-selling author, and pioneering human rights attorney Banafsheh Akhlaghi joins us for a feature interview today. Plus, the Roqe Roundtable convenes with special guest Niaz Salimi. This is Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. This is Roqe. Okay, welcome to episode number 31 of Roqe. امیدوار هستم که هفته خوبی داشتین.
I was waiting for that.
He won't let me just say something. He just won't let me say something. I am energized because we have a big show ahead featuring Banafsheh Akhlaghi, who will join me in just a little bit from San Francisco on questions around the very way in which we self-identify as a global community of Iranian descent, juxtaposed against the way we are seen by others. I'm also energized because I have a new haircut. And the whole gang is here with a very special guest at our roundtable. First of all, hello to you, the fabulous Keon.
Hello, and I must say I didn't notice that you had a haircut.
Really?
It looked great before.
Oh,
that's what I mean.
Thank you. I feel like I look like a, I don't know if bank tellers still exist, but I look like just a very average
proper
bank teller.
Yeah, you look like a proper
Would you like
young man.
to invest, debit, credit? I don't know. I don't even know how to be a bank teller.
It's a trustworthy haircut.
And nothing against bank tellers.
No.
Yeah, that's right. It's a standardized haircut. The fabulous Kiwa. Captain Reza, hello.
Hello, sir.
Nice to see you. Groovy Shaya.
Hello.
امیدوار هستم که خوب هستین.
هفته خوبی داشته بوده باشین.
Thank you. All right. And a very special guest joining us at our roundtable today a little later, and we'll say hello to her right now, the talented actor, artist, activist, and I think pillar of our Iranian Canadian community in Canada, who's done so much work for migrants at the grassroots level in this country. Niaz Salimi, hello.
Salam.
Salam.
Hello to you.
So
too.
nice to have you here.
So nice being here.
Thank you for doing this. I'm going to give you a proper introduction later in the show, but we're very happy. You don't want a proper introduction.
That's more than enough.
Thank you. No, you deserve much more than that. In fact, you should really be a featured guest coming up on Roqe, but hopefully this is just one of many other appearances. Because of the subject matter, we thought you'd be great on this particular program. A few quick announcements. Our website is up, roqemedia.com. Do you like the website, Keon?
I do. Who put that fabulous website together?
Have you seen the website,
I
Keon?
have. I glanced at it. Why are you putting me on the spot?
I knew she probably hasn't even looked at it.
I'm like the
right?
bad student to you.
Yeah.
What, is Reza the A+ student over there?
Well, I just know Reza and Shaya
Captain Reza.
have probably seen the website.
Really?
Roqemedia.com. Next week we're going to have pics of the whole team there. And
oh, no.
Well, yes.
We're going to be exposed.
You can use some of your Miss Canada
So
Miss
moving
Runner-Up.
on. Get to the subject.
I can't remember which
No.
one you were. We are going to also have the Roqe Dispatch. If you join our community on the website, so there's a button there to subscribe, and we'll have a regular newsletter. Also want to remind people that you can find us on Instagram. We post our interviews there as well. Did you know we have an Instagram?
Of course I did. That I know. That I know for sure.
Thank you, Kia.
I follow it as well.
It's not that you're not on top of these things in other parts of your life. It's just when it comes to Roqe, I just see you run in here, run out, and I'm never sure what you've been following. The Ervin Khachikian.
I can pronounce that better than you can. So Khachikian.
Yes. The Ervin Khachikian interview from earlier this week already has 2,000 streams on Instagram alone. So some folks are watching or listening to the show just on Instagram, as well as all the action on the YouTube and SoundCloud, Spotify, and iTunes. So at Roqe Media is our handle on Instagram, if that's your preferred platform. And our resident artist Ponta has done little graphics of each of the members of the Roundtable team on Instagram, so you can see that all there. And finally, I wanted to mention this week marked the 40th anniversary of the passing of the former Shah of Iran, in exile, of course, in Cairo, July 27th, 1980. In a couple of weeks' time, we're going to have a series of interviews with historians looking at the Shah and the Pahlavi dynasty from a few different perspectives. There will certainly be some differences of opinion, and I suspect some common ground as well. This will be a couple of weeks from now on Roqe, so stay tuned for that. Okay, Kian, Reza, Shaya, our dear Niaz, thank you. We will get to you and the Roundtable right after this interview. Let me get to our featured guest. Maybe one of the hardest questions for our Iranian community to grapple with, especially in the West, is how we are perceived and considered when it comes to our identity and status, and how we deal with discrimination and injustice towards Iranians in the diaspora. To put it another way, how do we address the disconnect between antiquated ideas of being Aryan and white, Babajan, ma sefid hastim, and the fact that we are inevitably seen as a minority? How do we connect the dots between a self-image of sophistication and accomplishment as a diaspora and the fact that we may get pulled out of a lineup or even banned from the United States based on our country of heritage? The question of our minority status and related rights and opportunities in countries around the world is inextricably linked to the notion of us being people of color. And yet that notion makes a lot of Iranians in the diaspora uncomfortable, right? And brings about associations that we take issue with, which raises a whole set of other questions. Can we really make headway as a community that needs to stand up for itself if we don't accept the fact that we can be seen as the other? Or is this all hogwash and Jian should get off the soapbox and everything is fine? These questions are not new to my featured guest today. She has had a remarkable career so far that has reached the upper echelons of law and academia in the United States. And for those who know Banafsheh Akhlaghi, it may be no surprise that she has ascended as far as she has. She is a doer. She was born in Iran, moved to America at a young age, and has become a pioneering civil and human rights attorney, an educator, a best-selling author, and social entrepreneur. Banafsheh started her career as a professor of constitutional law at the John F. Kennedy School of Law. She founded the National Legal Sanctuary for Community Advancement, a nonprofit organization dedicated to ensuring the human rights and dignity of Middle Eastern, Muslim, and South Asian peoples in the post-9/11 era. She has also worked as a consultant with the UN Development Fund for Women and is the former director of the West Region for Amnesty International. She's received numerous distinctions, including a certificate for special congressional recognition from the U.S. House of Representatives and being named one of the top 100 most influential lawyers in California. Banafsheh's practice area today includes intellectual property rights and immigration defense, and she is a board member at the Center for Human Rights in Iran. And right now, Banafsheh Akhlaghi joins me from San Francisco today. Hello.
Hello, my friend. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for doing this. How's it going over there?
It's going well. Still sheltering in place, manning the fort, and trying to do all things that we can to remain safe, and hope to have a better outcome here in California soon.
Yes, here's hoping for that. I'm honored to have you on this program, Banafsheh. And I want to get to your story, your Iranian identity, and our relationship as a community with being the other, as I talked about in the introduction there. But first, a general question, thinking about you and about the zeitgeist. And as someone who has worked in the field of law and human rights for so long, tell me about how you're processing the current moment, the current paradoxical moment in the United States, where you live and you teach the Constitution, an American administration accused of putting migrant children in cages, executing a travel ban affecting Iranians, and simultaneously, and perhaps not unrelated, a time of profound change and social awareness around race issues and injustices in the United States. How are you making sense of all that right now?
First, let me say that the honor is mine to be here with you and with your listeners. You know, the concept of this programming, I think, is not only timely, but in an essence, legacy building. In a way, oral histories of the diaspora. So I'm honored to be a part of that. And at this time, the picture that you just painted in your question, I think, is critical to our identity here in the U.S. and in Canada and abroad, outside of potentially our country of birth, as it was for me. You know, as I look out, I'm in the Oakland Hills. That's where my home is here in California. And you know, there's much to do in the city of Oakland, in Berkeley and Emeryville and San Francisco and all the cities around us in terms of protests that have some led to riots. And with the backdrop of Black Lives Matter, social equities, social injustices, how do I view it all? I think what most of us, I would say, who are people of color, because I consider myself a person of color, is that it's time to make the shifts that are being called for. It's time to have the voices who haven't been heard thus far come forward. It's time for people of color and those from the Black community to continue to stand together, unite towards a common aim. And I think that from that prism, I have a lot of hope. I see light at the end of this. Not from a someone might think, you're from California, so it's kind of like a kumbaya thing. Not from that place, but from the stance that if you look back at history and you look back at the various civil rights causes and movements and various rights-based movements, they start this way. And folks stand up and they have their voices heard. And then it's a challenge. There's the opposition to that, of course. But I don't think that any of what we are seeing should leave us feeling hopeless.
A lot of what's happening right now seems to be an attack on traditional institutions, some of which the time has come to reassess. You're sitting in the United States. You've been a professor of constitutional law in the United States, which is not so bad distinction for an Iranian kid. But you also have a tremendous affinity, you've said, for the American Constitution. If you can, briefly, why does the U.S. Constitution mean so much to you?
The Constitution began with, and you probably know this, and some of your listeners, many of your listeners probably know this, that the Constitution began with we, the white male Protestant landowners, right? Like that's who the Constitution was created for and who wrote it. And then it slowly, we lost one by one of those identity kind of prefixes, and then it became we, the people. And so when I think of the U.S. Constitution, and I spent some time in South Africa with some of the lawyers and judges who were part of the apartheid movement, and spent some time in India who were lawyers and judges who were with Gandhi's movement, they used the U.S. Constitution as the bases in the creation of their documents and their legal structures. Now, they took it much further than we did, and they incorporated additional rights that we don't have. But there's just something, for me, sacred about that document. The way in which this country's come about. Now, are we anywhere close to what the vision of that document was? No. Does the lady who stand proudly in the middle of the waterway in New York, would she be ashamed with what we're doing with children in cages and others? I would say yes, because it's not congruent to the promise. But there's a vision, there's a mission behind that document, that breathing, living document. And that is what I respect. And that's what I hold sacred. And that's what I, frankly, fight for. That's where I go back to in any of my cases, whether it was post 9/11 or any cases today. I hark back to those words and the essence of those words.
So you say, if somebody down in one of the protests right now, not far from you in San Francisco or in Portland up the coast or whatever, says, "Hey, lady, that document you revere was written by slave owners of a bygone era," you say what?
You say, absolutely right. Absolutely right. It was, and the method in which our cases, how we set precedent is we look at cases, right, and we take those cases to each level of our court system. And if we need to effectuate change, we take it to the highest court, at U.S. Supreme Court. One of the examples that I look at and I applaud is the LGBTQ community, when they moved the right to marriage in a very short period of time from here in San Francisco all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and prevailed. We used that same legal body and the legal system to be able to effectuate change, to alter the course of, now those same white slave owners probably never thought that this is how it was going to go, that we'd be giving rights for same-sex marriage. But here we are. And so I think we can't throw, how they say, the American saying of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's cooler heads need to prevail. And if there's a vision for an America, then I would say continue speaking loudly, continue protesting, continue gathering, use your First Amendment rights, and help effectuate that change.
Okay, let me weave the Iranian global diaspora into this, and I'm so glad that you described yourself as a woman of color, because it perfectly segues into what I want to do a bit of a deep dive into this issue I set up in the introduction of this episode, before we get to some of your personal story as well, and that is where we, the hyphenated Iranian community, if you will, sit in terms of being a minority group and our self-identity or lack thereof as such. I can't remember how many times I've been sitting with a group of Iranians here in Canada or in the United States, especially older Iranians, and they'll say something about the people sitting, say, around us, and they'll say, "In kharejiya," in kar mikonan, or something. In other words, seeing the people who have been here for generations as the foreigners. It's sort of the ultimate version of putting ourselves at the center of things. Why do Iranians have so much trouble seeing ourselves as the other?
I don't know if it's just an Iranian phenomenon or if it's a human phenomenon, that we don't want to see ourselves as the other. We want to see ourselves as trusted and integrated and welcomed and accepted, because after all, from the Iranian vantage point, we point to that, look, statistically, we're so educated and we're affluent and we add to the positive bottom line in any society that we're in, and. And all of that is true. We do have the heritage that goes back to our Aryan roots, and all of these things are true. And what's also true, concurrent to that, what's also true is that in the countries in which we reside, which tends to be primarily countries that are quote-unquote white countries, European, Canada, United States, we have part of the diasporas in Australia and New Zealand. So in these countries that we reside within, and I'm not talking about our brothers and sisters who are in the Middle East or elsewhere that look more like the majority. We don't look like the majority. Here in California, I don't look like the majority.
Right.
I have dark hair, dark eyes. I have olive skin. I can try to stay out of the sun, and I can use colored contacts and keep, take my hair a few shades lighter.
Right.
But at the end of the day, my name is Banafsheh Akhlaghi, and there is an otherness about me, right? My name's not Sally Smith, and I wasn't born in, here in California. I'm. It doesn't matter how much my English is similar to the native speaker. It doesn't matter how well I perform in this society. There's always a sense of, oh, you are doing so well and you're from Iran. There's an otherness already embedded.
Yep.
So, how do we come to terms with that? I think there might be, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a sociologist, and I think that would be interesting to bring in some of those folks to tell us from their vantage point. But I think there's a part of, especially those who, have left Iran for something better. We didn't leave Iran for something better. We left Iran for my education, and we did that in 74 or 75. So pre-revolution. But those who came after the revolution, I think it's really challenging to think, wow, so we can't be there, and we're not really assimilated here. So wherever the here is that they reside within.
Right.
So then where do we go? Who are we then? Where is our comfort zone?
But also in terms of the actual language of it too, I like having grown up in an Iranian family and being aware of the community, I can feel the uneasiness of people listening to this as I say, well, we're brown people or we're people of color, of certain folks. I also do feel, however, that it was anathema to say this 20 or 30 years ago. When I would talk about it, I would definitely get pushback. I would write articles about, a film that was racist towards Iranians because we're people of color, and people would say, "Why are you calling us people of color?" That seems to have been changing. And you've talked about something starting to shift after 9/11, where we started to see each other as part of a broader group of minorities. Can you speak to that?
Definitely. I mean, listen. We were on the special registration list after 9/11. And the special registration list, some of your listeners might know, but others may not. It was a list that was put together by Attorney General Ashcroft at the time under the Bush administration. And that list, that edict, had actually been sitting dormant on the books here, the law books here in the United States for some time. It was created and imposed upon the Japanese, which then led to their interment. So what the edict said said this: boys, men, and senior citizens over the age of 16 need to come into then INS buildings, for immigration buildings, now DHS buildings, Department of Homeland Security buildings, and be photographed, fingerprinted, and answer a series of questions. Well, the first group had 5 countries listed on it. Jian. Of this first 5 were Iranians. So, and then other nations. So the nations were about 24 countries, which covered North Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia, and Indonesia. And these were countries of interest, countries that are suspect. Things haven't really changed much, as you could see with the travel ban. We're still on that list. And I recall one of my clients saying in that first round, because they were going in, being interviewed, and many of them were being detained, and that they were in a detention cell waiting to figure out what's happening to them next. And they were shackled and handcuffed together, awaiting orders as to what would occur next, as I said. And one of the officers in the detention facility yelled out to a colleague of his, "Bring the shotgun. We've got a cage full of them." Well, a cage full of them, they're not identifying my client as the Iranian one, and that one as the Iraqi one, and that one as the Kuwaiti one, and that one is the Syrian one. They're not doing that.
Right.
Or the next rounds that started with the Pakistanis and the Afghanis. They see all of us as the same. And I know we don't do that. I know we understand ourselves as different, with different language and different heritage and different culture. But those who are looking at us, the reality is those that are looking at us, unless they have done their research and they're up on their history and geography, they don't separate us. And so I think it goes back to the first question that you had asked me. I think the moment that we, as the Iranian diaspora, can start to see ourselves as part of this larger tapestry that's in the United States or in Canada or elsewhere, and that tapestry is multicolored, and we are part of those colors, and not as a negative, not as a disparagement, but as what's so. It's what's so. We are people of color in the eyes of the white. So I don't know if that answers the question. I think what's going to happen, we're going to get a lot of upset after this interview. I'm sure you're going to get lots of comments that are saying this woman's crazy.
But here's the important point. I mean, this is the heart of it. You've touched on it, that it's not fanciful to say we're people of color. It's not some woke, trendy thing that I'm trying to play into. That what you're saying, if I understand correctly, is that it is important for us to recognize as a community that we are the other, so that, or before we can address injustices towards our community, let alone advance politically, socially, and economically in the West. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of power in first identifying who we really are vis-a-vis the location in which we reside. It's really critical to know that first, because, listen, these folks that are on the streets, all of the conversation about Black Lives Matter, and of course those that are people of color, this conversation, if we get that we're actually part of it, we now get to be a part of a much larger movement. And then those rights that come out of this movement, we could be at the decision-making table and making sure our voices are also being heard and being woven into the laws and the new paradigm that's going to come out of this. But if we don't see the power in joining hands and linking hands with others who are similarly situated, whether we want to believe that or not, that are similarly situated, then we're losing an opportunity for our own empowerment and our own, honestly, ultimately, affiliation wherever we are. You know, one reminder I have of this is during those days around 9/11, I met with Reverend Cecil Williams here in San Francisco, and he was, on the front lines with Martin Luther King. And I just shared with him, the heartache and the strife and the fear and the concern that I had for my clients and the communities that I was serving. And he said a lot of wonderful things, but the one thing that really stuck out for me was that he welcomed me, said, "Girl, welcome to the front lines." I never thought that I was going to be part of the front lines like he was. That's what our struggle is what I thought. But the more I sat with it, the more I thought, he's right. We're literally on those front lines. Whether by circumstance, geopolitical issues, however you want to look at it. But we are there. And it's time for us to identify, understand, accept, and stand.
But there's another thing, which is for those of us who've been in the West for a long time, there's another paradox that emerges, which is that even though we are more Western because we've been here so long, not to take anything away from our commitment to our Persian family values and meals and all of that, but even though we are more Western as a product of being here so long, we also remember what it was like to be here, say during the revolutionary period, what it was like to be here and to have no choice but to be seen as another, even though many in the diaspora might have been in denial about it. And so maybe this is a chance to segue into some of your background. I want to come back to this, but let's get a better understanding of how you've become this legal and social force. You've said a few times, I think you said this in your TED Talk, that you love people, you love humans. So tell me about coming to America from Iran, pre-revolution. Your family comes in the 1970s and sets up Hotel Akhlaghi in California.
Yeah, it wasn't a real establishment. Hotel Akhlaghi, something that my brother and I started calling our family home because when family members would come, they came after we did at different stages after the revolution or before the revolution. They came and stayed with us. And so my brother and I, in a very cheeky, Pedar Sukhte kind of way, started calling our house Hotel Akhlaghi. What was it like? We were the dark ones. We were definitely the dark ones, and we were different. And our food was different. I'm sure a lot of folks can relate to this, even outside of our culture. Our lunch boxes consisted of different foods. We had mortadella sandwiches, where everybody else had bologna sandwiches. Actually, pre the hostage crisis, I have to say, it was a sweet time as well. Yes. We were meeting new folks. We were learning this new culture that we're now a part of. And then the hostage crisis happened.
Let me get to the hostage crisis, and the effect it had on you as a kid. But first, you've said you were always the protector in your family. You're this little girl, but you were the protector of your brother. You were the protector of your mother. This makes sense in the context, in the prism of how we see you now, the protector of human rights, post 9/11, later in life. Why do you think you gravitated towards that role as a kid?
Well, there was a request by my father that I did. My father spent some of the year with us here in the United States and some of the year back home in Iran for a few years up until the revolution. And every LAX airport departure, there were, of course, lots of tears and upset. And my father would kneel down before me and say, you need to be my big girl and take care of your mother and your younger brother while I'm gone. And so I took that on as my duty, not an obligation, but my duty. And that really has been the core of my work everywhere you look, whether I'm on a board somewhere, the commission of the state bar that I've sat on, or in my work itself, or with my family and my community. So that base of "I've got your back, I've got you" is very real for me.
You also, Banafsheh, you've said, "I've always known I wanted to be a contribution to the world." And I have this image of you, this little girl, at those Iranian mehmoonies. You would sit with the men, even as a little girl, and speak out. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so, those who may not know of our culture, we have a lot of gatherings, right? We have a lot of mehmoonies, and you're invited to someone's home, or you're inviting people to your home, and generally the women gravitate together, and then the men would get together, and their conversations would be political, historic, economic, social, these types of things. And my interest was with the men, and I would go sit with the men. And I just remember, even at a young age, then I mean under the age of 10, as I would sit with my father, listening to the men debate about whatever the issues were of the day or the past, I had something to say, and my father would hush the conversation and allow my voice to be heard and for me to put in my input. And that, I've got to tell you, Jian Jian, that's probably one of the most formative things for me. That to this day, and even in my work, there's not been anything that has caused fear for me to speak up. And I think that's really critical in what my father was, instilled in me.
So
I think that
go ahead.
Sorry, I just remembered something that you had just mentioned in terms of the love for people. You know, the basis of my wanting to be a contribution is visceral. I mean, it's why I wake up in the morning. You know, I really believe it's the why I'm here on the planet, is to be a contribution in how I can. And I hope that, you know, and sometimes I don't do it well. Sometimes I overstep. Sometimes, you know, there are blunders. But it's always from that place of being a contribution. And I just remember this time again with my father, where he was cooking in our kitchen, and it's one of he has two recipes, and he was cooking one of those two. And I jumped up on the counter, and I remember asking him the question, Baba Jun, you know, dear father, how is it that some people become Martin Luther King or Gandhi or Mother Teresa, and then how is it that other people become Hitler or Stalin or Mussolini? In our context, in the house that I grew up in, these were the conversations. Our weekends were in front of the federal building in Los Angeles demonstrating against the regimes in Iran. And I say regimes, I mean Shah's regime or the current regime. So I grew up with this. You know, this was the water in which I swam in. And so my father didn't flinch when I asked the question. He just answered, it's all a matter of choice. And so in that space of my formative years, of that it's a choice, I chose contribution. And I could have chosen the other, I suppose, but I chose contribution. And so what I hope is that's what I leave as my legacy.
I love that story. I love that image of you and your dad in the kitchen having that conversation. Not soon after that, soon after that, I suppose, you have a rude awakening in terms of being seen as the other, if you didn't already notice that from your dark hair and your complexion and all of that. And this is the revolution period and the hostage crisis, and you being a kid in the United States, as I discussed a few moments ago. I often try to implore folks in our diaspora now who are either younger, who've come more recently, to understand what it was like back then when Iran seemingly overnight became this arch enemy of the United States and the West. Tell me how it affected you as a kid.
It was horrible. It was horrible, Jian Jian. We were, my brother and I were in elementary school at the time, and, you know, we went from all of the kids on the block and in the school being our friends, folk, you know, kids that are in the backyard playing with us, in the front yard playing with us, and to nothing, to all of a sudden, no one was now allowed to interact with us. And I remember my younger brother, he's about 3 years younger than I am. He started getting picked on in school. And you got to understand, he was probably in second or third grade at the time. And he started being picked on in school, and the kids were pushing him and saying, release our hostages. And being the protector and the older sister, of course, I jumped in and defended my brother, and we came home. But those were all kids that were, you know, doing slumber parties with us, and all of a sudden, as though we were holding their hostages personally in our backyard in Orange County, California. Yeah. That time, I think, you know, it was, whether it was the students that were being deported, families like mine that were being singled out and attacked, or it's not being allowed into the country. If we really look at it, there's been these times, and at least for me, in the 40 plus years that I've been in this country, that, it's like, I'm not really sure when it was cool to be Iranian. I don't know when it was okay to be Iranian. We've always kind of been, singled out as the terrorist and a threat and not friend. So whether it's that time during the hostage crisis or as we talk right now in the events of today, I think it's always been challenging being an Iranian, at least here in America.
Back in the early 2000s, I had just started a TV show, and I was a guest on this late night talk show, kind of, and the host said, and I said something about being Iranian, and he said, "Oh, you're playing the Persian card." And I said, "The Persian card? When would that be an advantage, historically, at least in the last few decades, to play a Persian card? It's not really helped us that much, as a kid, it certainly didn't help. We kid about it now, but it's heartbreaking. I remember some story you had told me about your mom having to wake up early in the morning and wash down the front door. Can you explain what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it almost felt like it was a daily event. I'm not sure it was a daily event, but people would come and dispose their human remains, and my mother would wake up in the morning and she'd wash it down, so that when we woke up and were on our way to go to school, that's not what we literally stepped in or had to face. There are so many episodes like that where my father was outside with a few of our family members, and at the time they were younger men, maybe in late high school, early college years, and they were all working in the front yard, and all of a sudden I just remembered my father screaming out to the family members, my cousins, to come back, because they had gone charging towards a car that had thrown things at them. We'd wake up in the morning and the house would be toilet papered, and these. And I don't think any of this is just our story. These are the stories of many. I mean, I remember all of a sudden younger Iranian men starting to take Italian names and wanting to refer to themselves as Italian rather than Iranian. But these are I think these are the types of things. These are the types of events that lead us to really going back to the very first question that you asked, which is, are we other? Are we people of color? And I don't think that there's any evidence, at least in this country, that I could point to say that, no, absolutely, we are integrated and we're seen as equals. And I think that's important, because it's important for us to embrace reality.
So the story goes, by the way, that after that, undeterred by these horrible events, you end up going to college at the age of 15. Clearly a slacker, not an A-type personality at all. Yeah, college at the age of 15. Your dad expects you to be a petrochemist, but you do finally end up announcing, or I suppose intending to be a lawyer. You become a lawyer. You become a professor of constitutional law. Banafsheh, one of your lasting accomplishments, we've referred to it a couple of times. It came about 20 years ago. That the founding of the National Legal Sanctuary for Community Advancement. How did 9/11 affect you? Why did you want to leap to the defense of Muslims and Middle Eastern people at that point?
Well, it was literally as a result of a phone call from a former student who was in my constitutional law class. He had called and said that a friend of his was going to be questioned by the FBI for a third time. And that individual was Palestinian heritage, born in Jordan. And here in the United States, he came as a student, and then an H-1B specialty worker, and then received his legal permanent residency card, his green card. And so that interview that I attended really changed everything in terms of how I saw where we were going in this country. And so during that interview, as I was representing the client, and this was my first client, I wasn't practicing law at the time. I was teaching the Constitution at the time. The FBI agents asked, if you're innocent, why do you have an attorney? And so I would have to keep bringing up the Constitution, and thank goodness I was teaching the Constitution at the time. And at the very end of it, because I got in their way, I presume, they were upset and they pushed away from the table we were sitting in at a Starbucks because they kept wanting to go into his place of business, and it was really creating a lot of agitation, to say the least. So we were at a local Starbucks, and one of the gentlemen who was asking the questions pushed away from the table, and his chair fell back. And that was the first time that he addressed me directly. And he said, "Counsel will be in contact." And I said, "We look forward to speaking with you and hosting you at my offices." And I didn't have an office at the time, so I went and got an office. But within a few days, I sent a letter to headquarters in Sacramento and then CC'd DC, asking for a cease and desist, and they did write back, stating that they would not pursue any further questioning. And when I contacted the client, Jian Ghomeshi, and told him that they're no longer going to be coming by and questioning him any further, I thought he would be elated, but he wasn't. And so when I asked a little bit more as to why he wasn't excited about the fact that this is done, he said they lost child that his wife was carrying at the time because of the stress. That led me to start doing this work, because that wasn't America to me. And listen, like I said, I grew up in a very open-eyed family, so it wasn't like I have a rose-colored glasses about the United States. But something just shifted and just got me at that moment. This is not America. This is not what I'm standing for. This is not why I stand in front of the classroom and teach the Constitution. So then the organization was born after a few years of what I thought would be just a couple of years of working in the space, but it kept growing and the numbers of clients kept growing. And so I thought that what we really need at this point was an organization that was going to write the story, our civil rights story, rather than someone else writing it on our behalf. And we need to be out in the front defending our own rather than others defending us.
Tell me about what the most profound takeaway was through those years and that organization. You talked earlier about the civil rights leader saying, "Welcome to the front lines, sister." And here you are going from being a law professor, obviously involved, as you say, through your whole life, but to really being on the front lines at a highly turbulent time, right post 9/11, where probably you were even suspect despite your credentials. Tell me about what you learned from that, what your takeaway from that was in terms of human rights, humanity, and as we segue back into being an Iranian and where we fit into this equation.
This is such a good question, Jian. Such a good question. I think that the first thing that popped in my mind when you asked it is that change is possible. Change is really possible. Transformative change takes something else, and that's the space in which I'm playing in today. Transformative change, which is long-lasting change. But change is possible, and change is possible, Jian, with people that you wouldn't even think could possibly be an ally. To this very day, I am still friends with and colleagues with the gentleman who was primarily on the other side of the aisle from me on most of my cases. And he was the one person, one was similar to him in every state at the time, who was the attorney for the Department of Homeland Security on the national security cases. But that gentleman, to this day, is a friend of mine, and we were able to become partners through this process of being able to get these cases out of the suspect category. I mean, who would ever think that was the case? That would be the case. Or individuals in the media that would cover these cases like as though their own lives depended on it. So when you start to see the issue as not us and them, even though we're talking about the other, right? But if you start seeing ourselves as part of a much, as I said, a much larger tapestry that's being woven together. There is absolutely, without a doubt in my mind, that change is possible.
Let me come back to the Iranian diaspora and your work around human rights. I should note you sit on the board of the Center for Human Rights in Iran that does such essential work in bringing human rights abuses to the attention of the world. I guess I want to say to you, what do you want to say to the Iranian community in terms of learning how to address human rights issues? You've said we need to learn as Iranians how to do democracy. I know it sounds dismissive on the face of it, but I think I know where you're going with that. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yes. And again, not to be disrespectful, but from the years of my life thus far, and I'm speaking to you as 51 years old, what I've seen in my lifetime, the way in which we, and I say we as the Iranians who have conversations about how Iran should be and shouldn't be and which direction it should go and shouldn't go. And what I'm about to say is not rocket science, and it's been said before, but it's good to be reminded that democracy means is that you actually sit across from the other and not agree and disagree, but yet be able to hear the other and at some point find where common ground can be. Now, there are some places where there is no common ground, right? There's no discussion when it's a human rights violation, right? We have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that says so. And there are many other documents that say where is the line that you will not cross. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how to be able to come together and find mechanisms to be able to hear each other. Listen, if we could learn from Gandhi or Mandela, we should. Those icons taught us how to be able to transcend these massive, massive injustices. And I think I would welcome our brethren and sisters to start looking at where are places where we could find common ground.
I don't want to put this all on you. You're just one voice and your one opinion, and there's really no right answer to this, and everybody has it. But you are an important voice in our community, and you have worked in law and academia, and you do understand the Iranian community. So you won't be held to it, but why are we so bad at this? Do we have to go back to again 2,500 years of history, or we can if we want, but why do we have this issue with doing democracy?
It's not a loaded question at all, Jian.
Come on, it's a rook. Come on. What am I supposed to do?
Why? I mean, there really is. I mean, if you take it out of a geopolitical context and just bring it home, literally in your own home.
Yes.
How do we interact with each other? How do we speak to each other? How often are we righteous? How often do we say our way is the right way? How often do we hear someone else and say, "Oh, wow, you completely changed my mind. I had no idea." Right. It's cultural. There are so many layers to this. I don't think it. And then, of course, if you take it all the way out of the home and put it into society and put it all the way up to the nation state, that's going to carry through. I think there's a lot we need to learn, and I honestly believe it starts with the individual. There's no way you're going to make societal change unless we start looking at ourselves.
Let me turn it around. And because while you've said Iranians need to learn how to do democracy, you've also said something else that maybe this is your salvation here. if I've dug a ditch for you, you released a book that became a bestseller in 2015, a book of poems and thought pieces called Beautiful Reminders. I want to quote from one of the passages in this book where it says, go on, and turn the corner. It is nothing to fear. It's the wisdom of the ages that is waiting for you, dear. The tenderness of ancestors. Go on, walk towards it with your arms wide open and your heart ready for its embrace. It's the path designed to you, your ultimate grace. You know, I love that piece. And the part about ancestors and wisdom of the ages seems germane here. We saw we need to learn how to do democracy, but we say that, but what can we learn from our particular ancestors and ancestry?
You know, I think, you had mentioned our heritage, our coming from a great land, the Aryan land. You know, and as I'm speaking, I'm looking at the Cirrus human rights cylinder that someone had gifted to me. That's also who we are. You know, that's also what we have created, the first human rights documentation. We've also been people who have been inclusive of varying ideologies and belief systems. I would say, let's pull from that history. Let's pull from those teachings as we're also going forward.
We don't always get it right, but you're also a fan of failure sometimes. What can we learn from failure?
It's I think it's the juice. I think it's the juice of life. It's where we can see and diagnose what the next steps should be. You know, the commission that I sit on, and I'm really proud of the work that we do at the State Bar here in California. It's the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission. And I've been with them for the last decade, and now it's chairperson. And we fund over 100 organizations, legal aid organizations up and down the state of California, for them to do amazing work for the indigent community, senior citizens, homeless, and others. And every year we review, obviously, what we did before, and we look to see how can we, where did we fail? Where did we come up short? And where can we expand the work that this good work that we're all committed to? And I think if we don't take that opportunity to look at where those quote-unquote failures are or coming up short in our own lives, in our professions, in our diaspora as we teach the next generation, I don't think we're able to see the future and the next steps that we're to take with clarity, with true clarity. So I think it's, as I said, I think it's the juice of life.
You've been so generous with your time. I'll end with a couple of personal questions, if you'll allow me. You've been at the forefront of addressing horrible situations, human rights abuses around the world. You've seen it up front. You've traveled the world. You've seen it at home in the U.S. where you live. And yet you have been very clear that you do not believe in bitterness and anger. How do you avoid becoming angry and bitter when you do the work you do?
Oh, I don't avoid it. I do become angry. I just don't become bitter. So I work through my anger. I'll speak it through. Meditation's critical to me. But where I ultimately land is I'm always trying to understand, Jian, the other side. I'm always trying to get over there where they are and figure out why they do what they do and say what they say. But bitterness, I don't do bitterness. For what purpose? I mean, what is it if I hold this in my heart, like we say, kinei, right? Holding grudges, it only hurts me. It doesn't hurt the person that I'm again.
I don't think anybody intends sets out as a life ambition to be bitter. It happens because you've seen so much injustice. For example, you become cynical, you become disheartened, you become deflated, you become bitter. You haven't. What's the magic sauce?
I don't know. I believe in people. I believe in humanity. I believe that at the root of it, we're good. I believe that we make bad choices and that there's circumstances that cause us to out of fear, react. But I don't believe that people are inherently bad. I don't believe that people, if given a choice, they want to be evil and do bad things. And I concentrate on the beauty. I concentrate on the places where our humanity shines, Jian. I mean, there are a lot of horrible things happening on the planet, sure, here in the United States, but there is more good occurring than bad occurring, which goes to, my personal mission statement of the realization of peace in my lifetime.
Oh, look at you! That's my final question. My final question. There's so much synergy in this dance of an interview that you've led us there. You've said that every action you choose to take arises from your personal mission statement. So I was going to ask you, what is it, and whether you believe it's possible. What's the mission statement?
The realization of peace in my lifetime. And, folks might hear that differently, as though what I'm saying is that we will reach peace in my lifetime. But what it means for me, the realization of peace in my lifetime, is just this very moment, Jian. I am absolutely aware of, realize that in this moment, which is my lifetime and your lifetime, there's peace between us. And I concentrate there. I look for those moments. And there are many of them in my day and in your day and in our collective day. And the places where it doesn't exist, I try to the best of my ability as a human being, because I'm also flawed and am incapable at times, to transform it, to have it not be as painful or struggle or such. And that's where I want to spend my time and where I want to spend my intentional time and focus,
That's really beautiful, Banafsheh. It is. Although I suspect you've amended it, that it originally was world peace, and now it's just peace between you and I in this conversation. What's it going to be in a couple weeks from now?
Peace with me by myself. No, I think honestly, if we did more of that, Jian, what you're doing here with this program, if we did more of this where we hear each other, get to understand each other, understand that honestly, as cliche as this sounds, but we are all walking with our own challenges and our own stuff, and give each other a break and give each other the benefit of the doubt and bring compassion to the space. And we did that in our homes, and we did that on our streets, and we did that in our workplaces. It's impossible for that not to get up, underneath the decision makers as well, and change what we're all hoping for.
Banafsheh Akhlaghi, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your wisdom. I thank you for going to some of those difficult places in this conversation and some of the subjects that may be considered taboo for our community. I'm very grateful that we got the chance to do this. Thank you for this.
Thank you. This was really a delight, Jian. Thank you for incorporating my voice and what you're up to.
Khodafis.
Khodafis.
Banafsheh Akhlaghi, the pioneering civil and human rights attorney, educator, best-selling author, social entrepreneur. She joined us from San Francisco, California today. Okay. I am decompressing from that, from those words from Banafsheh Akhlaghi. That was quite a conversation. I actually cherish a lot of what she had to say there. That meant a lot, that interview. With the roundtable has been here the whole time. We've turned your microphones back on now. Captain Reza.
Hello.
Hello. Groovy Shaya.
Hi.
The fabulous Keon.
Hello.
Hello. And our special guest on the roundtable this week, Niaz Salimi, an actress, a human rights activist, the founder and executive director at Mothers of Rainbow Foundation. Welcome, dear Niaz.
Thank you, and hello to your audience.
You know, Niaz, I should start with you. Your personal story of all you've been through inside and outside of Iran as an artist, as an activist, is remarkable and worthy of a proper interview on another edition of Roqe. But knowing that you've had this incredible story yourself, and we heard some of the hardship that Banafsheh went through as a kid in the United States, you've been through that in Iran and outside, as I say. Tell me, reflect, if you will, on where your thoughts were as you were listening to what Banafsheh had to say.
Well, I'm at awe by her assessment of the situation, by her compassionate, honest, and balanced, fair assessment of the situation. This is the problem. We are suffering from identity crisis here and back home, regardless. I believe that she correctly addressed the issue regardless of our background or culture or heritage or history, however we perceive ourselves among ourselves. We are people of color, we are Middle Eastern, and we are Muslims. And for whatever reason, we don't want to acknowledge and embrace any of those.
Well, you say for whatever reason, but you must have some sense of what the reasons are. Why do we have such a? I mean, she addressed it, but why is there such a resistance? It seems easy for you to say we're people of color. Why is there such resistance in our community sometimes to say that?
Well, I believe she accurately explained everything, and it makes it a challenge for me to add to that, but I think sometimes we act like little children. We close our eyes and we believe the problem is gone. Because especially outside of Iran, we don't like these parts of our identity and we just want to deny it.
And it feels like airing dirty laundry to talk about these things, like it's taboo, like we're not supposed to have these conversations.
I think it's more than that. It's not just airing your dirty laundry, but by naming it, you make it happen. You make it as a fact. Yes. You actualize it. Yes. Exactly. And to me, it's very immature way of dealing with these issues. If these are issues that affect us, we have to acknowledge them, we have to identify them, we have to own them, and then think about how we can change the meaning of the content of the box of being Middle Eastern.
Yes.
Because there is some meaning, some quality attached to that label, to the content of that box, and by changing that content, the meaning will change and the perception will change. Because if I'm a fair person, doesn't matter what the title says, eventually you realize that I'm fair or I'm educated or I'm open-minded, whatever good qualities that we want to add to that to separate us from that ancient meaning or cliche meaning of those labels.
You know, to put the question to you that forms the pretext of this episode, because you do some work that is similar to Banafsheh. When I was thinking about you coming in for this, you've been dealing with migrants and minority groups and injustice for years. Do you agree with her that it is it's not just fanciful, but that it is imperative that the Iranian community begin to accept that we are the other, other minority groups.
Definitely, definitely. First of all, I have to mention the difference between Ms. Akhlaghi and myself is she has an office. I work at the corner of a street. Right. Yes, to me, the key is through civic engagement. We have to believe that we are, as she mentioned, the citizens of those 24 countries, those nationalities. We are part of that.
Yeah.
And by acknowledging that, we look at the issue to see what is that we don't like about this. First of all, internally, we have to do our own auditing. What is that we don't like about it? What is the perception of, other people who are not like us, who don't have the same skin color, who don't have the same culture background? And then if there is something that is unfair, this is something that is not right in their perception, we have to work towards changing that. And we can't do it alone. We can't do it as Iranians. As she said, we are part of that tapestry. We can't sit back and be quiet and just go out and accept everybody to support us and fight for our cause when something targets us, only us.
It was so beautiful when she talked about Black Lives Matter, and she says, for the first time, we have a community. Those people of color who are fighting for, recognition against injustice, all that, we're part of that. We can be part of that. Instead of sitting on the sidelines and saying we're Safid or debating whether we're part of it or if they're different, it's a place for us, right? Did that resonate for you?
Definitely. I actually work most of the time outside of the Iranian community, but I take my Iranianness with me. I try to be, if it's not too much to ask, the ambassador of my community in any peace movement, social justice movement, anything. Because I believe as she said, by holding hands and becoming one voice, we can have more effect, we can have more support when we need, and then there are so many issues that affects all of us similarly. I remember I had this interview at CTV many years ago, and that's when I was involved with Muslim Canadian Congress during the time I was president of Muslim Canadian Congress, something that my community never forgave me for doing or being involved. And the person who was interviewing me asked me if I am a practicing Muslim, and I openly declared that I'm not. I have never been religious. I'm not a believer at all. But we are part of the statistics. We are part of the number. There are 1.5 million Muslims in Canada, regardless if I'm an artist, a leftist, a socialist, whatever, atheist, gay, lesbian. I am part of that number. I explained to her, I said, my younger son was born outside of Iran. He is part of that number. So if we don't want what that number or that qualities or whatever attribution there is to this number, we have to own it and then try to change it.
Again, regardless of how we want to see ourselves.
Yeah.
We can't control how others see us.
No.
And others have certain ideas about us that we're not going to, the package that we can't necessarily escape from, and better to understand that and own it. I'm going to come back to you, Niaz. Let me just get a quick sense from everybody else, because you guys all have come from different places, literally, and might come from different places on Banafsheh. Shaya, and you don't have to react to exactly what we've been talking about. I know we've just all heard this interview and are reacting to it. So go ahead. What were you feeling as I was talking to her?
The thing that I want to say, actually, I was heartbroken when she told the story about what happened to him and many others after hostage crisis. That was unbelievable for me, unbelievable. And it was, I'm speechless.
I've said this a number of times. I'll keep saying it. And consider yourself fortunate. People who come now, as difficult as it may be, as much as there may be racism, institutional or otherwise, or whatever in the air, in the Iranian community, you will never know what it was like during that hostage crisis when we were enemy number one. And it completely resonated for me when she was talking about that. And it's interesting that it comes as such a surprise to you, because you've come to one of the places in the diaspora that's populated by Iranians, Toronto, and so you can kind of incubate here, right? Without, but the feces on the front door and all of that, it is shocking. And she lost all her friends, and by the way, and she would say that the studies show that Iranians were relatively well liked. If you take the United States, or either people didn't know about Iranians, or they had a positive impression-ish, up until the revolution, and so then there's this massive upswing in antagonism, hatred, demonization of Iranians. It levels off a little bit. Then it happens again after 9/11, despite the fact that Iran wasn't directly involved in 9/11 at all, or Iranians weren't. That there's this upswing then again, and so it's sort of a can't catch a break category of being Iranian. But the stories she tells are very realistic for me.
Oh, I cannot believe it. Still, I cannot believe it.
Reza, what was your Captain Reza? Sorry, what was your?
Get it right.
I can't believe I just called you by your common name.
You?
Yes.
Don't do that again, please. But in all seriousness, first of all, incredible interview. I was just like Niaz mentioned. I was in awe of what she had gone through, and her perseverance and her attitude towards that. And she said a couple of things that completely resonated with me. She said quite near the end of the interview, when she said she doesn't get bitter, she doesn't hold grudges, but she does get angry, because that's natural human reaction. Banafsheh really broke down our issue in a way that, this is my opinion and my take, I think as Iranians, I think we suffer from superiority complex individually, and that's why we have problems with being a team player, and I think that goes back to the fact that Iran is a country of 1,000 cultures. And again, this is my opinion. I think again, she sort of mentioned that very briefly, that we should bring a psychologist to analyze this perhaps better. I don't know.
There's got to be some kind of path to navigate between what you just called the superiority complex, or somehow seeing ourselves as better, and pride. There's because often it gets talked about as pride, and there's nothing wrong with pride and being proud of our Iranian heritage, our culture, etc. But we all know that if we said to a group of Iranians, maybe even the people in this room, are you the same as Indians, Pakistanis, and Syrians and Lebanese? And Iranians are going to have a variety of reactions to that. They're not all going to be positive, that's for sure, and that's a problem. Right, that's a problem, because that's one of the reasons that inhibits us from being able to join a broader community. That Banafsheh is making the case, and what was so powerful for me about her is she's not calling ourselves people of color out of any need for hipster validation or self-victimization. You know, for her, it's the reality of how we are seen and treated, and she brings this legal and institutional case, at least in America, why it's really important for us to embrace this idea of the other. And she says in the jail cell, you know, they're not pointing you out and going, oh, you're different from the Syrian and the Lebanese guy and the other. They're all the same, you know.
Yeah.
There's no special dispensation because you say you're an Aryan. And that was very powerful. Niaz, you're nodding your head. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I believe individually we can pull ourselves up from that group, whatever you want to call it. Individually, we can be successful through our contribution to this, that, through our talent, make money, be great artists, be great at academia. But when the time comes, we are being pushed back to that point. We are part of that. And we need help and support. We need understanding of us, our values, in those rainy days, in those bad times. In good times, nobody cares, right? We all go about our own lives. But in those times, we don't want to be left alone because we never contributed to any issue in the society, because I'm not part of that, I'm not like that, I'm lighter than this, I am better than that. And this is the problem, because when
we isolate ourselves as a community.
Exactly. When we had this issue, let's say, the sanction, nobody knows, nobody cares, except some members of the community. And of course, there is a big issue about that, because
the community itself doesn't even agree on
exactly.
Yeah,
because Iraq went through that, and they suffered, and it majorly affected their life, their history, everything, their current history. We even don't talk to them. We even don't want to learn. We don't want to listen, not follow or agree. Just listen to their stories about what happened to them.
Well, that's interesting, because one of the other things that really stuck out to me towards the end of that interview is and I'm thinking about people listening to this right now. I hope they get to this part of the podcast where I can say to them, it's okay if you disagree.
Yeah.
It's okay if you think this is hogwash. If you think Sefid Hastin, why are they talking? That's okay. The point she was making about democracy, which sounds like this important word that's in a book somewhere, she said it's about sitting across from the person you disagree with and talking. Let's talk about it. Right, and that's something we have trouble doing in our community as well.
Yeah.
Because are the people who disagree with things that are being said here right this second, as they're listening, ready to sit and talk about it? You're welcome to come in here and talk about it. We'll put you on the show. Let's talk about it. But there is we've talked about this a number of times over our last 31 episodes. There is this reflexive, dug-in mentality that we have experienced in our community. Not exclusively; these are generalizations, of course, where people take a position and they ride the position. There's no discussing it, right?
I can tell you, at least in my opinion, why is that the case now. This is because everything has been politicized in our community. Like before, we were people of color living in North America or Europe or whatever, of course. Now it's all politicized. So it has a double meaning. So we want to basically get away from whatever that means or the effect of it. We don't want that to reflect on us. So that's why I tell you, I was shocked in the recent demonstration we had against war. There were a group of Iranian there supporting the war and accusing us as being the supportive of our government back home, which was nonsense. Even the meaning of peace and war has been politicized. So if you are for peace, maybe you have an agenda.
You must be with the regime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is very dangerous. very dangerous.
Kian, I'm so sorry. It's I've taken. We've been discussing.
I've just been listening intently.
Your reflections on any part of that.
First of all, I have to thank you for introducing Banafsheh to me. I'm shocked that I had never heard her name before. So when I heard she was coming on the show, I watched her TED Talk and was blown away. You have this impressive woman. She went to college at 15, has all these accomplishments. Besides all that, she genuinely loves humans. And I think she was specifically put on this earth to help humanity. And that really touched me. And I think she even teared up at one point during her TED Talk. And I felt that. She's like the Persian Amal Clooney. That I don't know if she'll like that label, but honestly, that's how I look at her. This beautiful woman, a role model that every Iranian girl should look up to. And I think she touched on it really well. You asked her, how can we fix the issues in our community? And she said, how about start with yourself? Look inside yourself. What do you want to represent? How do you want the Iranian community represented? And everything has to start with love. We have to have good intentions if you want to be seen as a positive community and do good in this world. So.
Again, I ask you these questions. I always feel like I'm putting you on the spot all of a sudden, but you are sitting at the round table. How has it been in your family? If you were to say, I don't know now, or as a kid, or say I'm a brown person, how are your parents with that? How's your family with that?
I don't know if I look at it as a positive thing, but we tend to be quite lighter on my side of the family, and I hate to admit this, but my mom would kind of say this in a positive light, like we're Aryan, we're not like the Arabs, and blah blah blah. It's kind of seen as a positive thing in the family, and I guess I grew up with that, and it wasn't until later in life when I started to be exposed to more of the Iranian community and see, wow, there's so many different other subcultures in this country, and there's so many different languages. We're all from the same place. So why is it always a competition? Like, well, we're lighter skin. We come from this region. We're better. Why are we like this as a community?
There definitely is that within the Iranian community. There's an elevation of people with lighter skin amongst some folks.
And not just our country.
But not just the Iranian community.
Exactly.
I was going to say
India.
that happens in, you could say in the Jewish in the Israeli community between the Ashkenazi and Sephardic communities, etc. There's been histories of this, but we as representatives of our community, I find it really personally sad that some are considered lesser because they have darker skin, even in our own community, let alone the way we treat other communities. And that's for another show. Reza, you're chomping at the bit. What did you want to say?
Oh, no, I'm just listening.
You're eagerly at the microphone.
Eagerly, yeah.
Just listening. Okay.
But I was going to say that my parents still to this day hold a strong position in terms of them thinking that, we are, everybody's good. You know how Persian parents are, like certain Persian parents. Like my parents are like, no, everybody's, we are all equal, we're all human, but we're Iranians, we're better than Arabs.
We are more equal.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So it's a subtle way of.
There would be nothing wrong with being brown, but what's it if you do?
Not us.
I would hope that we, as the next generation, would raise our kids a little differently. Not to say that our parents were awful parents, they did their best, but I should hope that we would raise them knowing that we're all equal. And
well, I wanted to ask Niaz because and all of us because Banafsheh does suggest that things are changing. She says that for her, it was seeing it after 9/11. There's been this trajectory over the last 20 years where she sees, I said, even this conversation, about being people of color, could we have had this conversation 20 years ago? I mean, outside of activist circles or certain, academic groups, and she thinks, no, that's really changed, that there's more willingness in our community to embrace a minority status, see the importance of that in terms of the kind of legal representation that comes from it and all of that. What is your sense of that, Niaz?
I totally agree with her. I believe in that. Remember, I can be your parent, right? I was raised in that culture. Within ourselves, that was the dialogue. That was the belief. And then we came out of that culture. Our children are raised here. They go to school, they mix with different, nationalities, different ethnic groups. They learn from them. They experience for themselves. They don't listen to us necessarily, and our ideas, as valuable as it is to them, or they pretend, but it is not the only way of looking at things. That's not the only fact, right? And also, we never had these type of activism back home. Never, ever someone raised these issues. Now here, if not in our community, in other communities, in other groups, people are discussing these issues. People are working towards, changing what's not desirable, what's not fair, what's not right. And our kids get exposed to that. And that's an amazing thing. Of course, it doesn't resolve in one generation, but at least the stories they tell their children, the values they basically hand to their children is different from us and what we got from our parents.
I guess some folks would say we didn't have time for these issues. We're too busy trying not to get jailed by the regime back home, or
changing the world.
Well, yeah. So So Shaya, we're as somebody who's much newer to this conversation, newer to the diaspora, who was only in Iran 2 or 3 years ago. Does this seem like a very foreign conversation to you?
Yes. Actually, I have a story that in Toronto, I went to a restaurant called Chopin, and there is a piano there, and I went there. I wanted to play piano, and they didn't serve me. I have I had this experience here, but I didn't know that I consider as colored people until Black Lives Matter and Roqe episode on that, and then I realized, oh, really? So, yeah.
So you've I mean, you are in the most diverse city in the world, in Toronto. So maybe it's a little easier coming here.
Yes.
But I don't know how much you've traveled. But once you start traveling, you start recognizing the way people perceive you. It's not
for sure. No, I mean, for sure. I knew that I'm not white. I'm different. I have different looking, but. The designation, the name for it. No, yes, yeah. I didn't. I don't know if somebody fight against racism. It
affects you as well.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Interesting.
But that makes me sad, because it's because we have to do a better job then of educating our own community, including you, about racist incidents towards Iranians, because they exist all over North America. We know about them, we see them, we hear about them, and we cannot live in this la-la land of saying, oh, that happens to Arabs, it doesn't happen to Iranians, because those distinctions aren't made in the broader community necessarily. We wish, as Banafsheh said, that everyone had a good sense of history, knew what. Not to take anything away from the Arabs, but that to know the differences of different cultures. And none of these distinctions are made. You know that.
Yes, exactly.
This is so.
But I think another reason that Iranians, like when the racism or discrimination towards Arab people occurs, they try to distance themselves from it, and they don't include themselves, is because the animosity between Iranians and Arabs in general as well. So we want to distance ourselves from Arabic culture, Arabic language, religion, anything that has to do with that, as much as humanly
possible. You're an actor,
possible.
right?
That's right.
Do you think that you wouldn't get cast as a terrorist because you're Iranian
and
not Arab?
One of the reasons that I've
haven't you already?
No, you are 100% right. One of the reasons actually that I stopped acting for a while is because that was the only thing that I was being submitted for and going for. Even though, yeah, and it is quite, it's not, well, it's the reality of the situation. But but one thing that Niaz said that completely spoke to what Banafsheh was talking about is that, yes, we cannot change it overnight. However, this conversation is important, this initiation is important, and this is the beginning of it. Just like the civil rights movement, like it didn't happen overnight, but it happened and it started somewhere. And this is an important conversation to be had.
All right. Before we end this roundtable, I want to give a final word to Niaz. I almost feel embarrassed bringing you here as conversing with us, since you've got so many more years of experience in this, dealing with these issues, and we're all opining. But the idea is to get different perspectives from different walks of the Iranian diaspora and different ages and different years of being here. So a final word, anything you want about what reflecting on this conversation.
First of all, I'm delighted to be here. I love you. I love your program. I love your colleagues. And what you do is great and very important. If I want to close with one issue, what Ms. Akhlaghi said at the end of her interview about democracy. We have been longing for this democracy for at least the last 200 years, right? But our understanding of democracy is absolutely wrong, off. Democracy is not a gift that is being sent to us, to our door. As much as it's our right, it's our responsibility, and we have to make it happen. We have to build it. We have to work towards that. If within our own community we discriminate someone who is one shade darker than us, or has an accent, or believes in whatever different, we cannot expect democracy to happen for us. We have to understand it. We have to acknowledge our responsibility, and we have to work hard towards that. If we are not ready, it's not going to happen. It's like that bird of happiness. You have to be awake to hear that, to see that. If you are asleep, it comes and goes, and you never know. You lose your chances. So we have to wake up, and we have to start working towards that. I may not be able to change my own opinion or my way of looking at the world, but I can be kind to my children, to the next generation, and try to help them to elevate this situation. If, to me, it's not where it is, I have to help them to develop, improve, and elevate whatever part of this identity that we don't like. So,
Niaz Salimi, it has been a very important and very helpful and lovely to see you here and to have you as part of the roundtable. Thanks for doing this week.
Thank you.
That's our special guest, Niaz Salimi, actress, human rights activist, founder and executive director, Mothers of Rainbow Foundation. That is our Roqe Roundtable for this week. We've only got one thing left to do, and that is Letters of the Week.
Okay, so last week on episode 29, we had the human rights advocate, writer, Professor Mansour Farhang on the show. He spoke to us about being arrested for the first time at age 16, all for advocating for former Prime Minister Mossadegh, as well as his short stint as the ambassador to the United Nations during 1979, and then escaping right after that while his friends were all being executed.
Yeah, it was quite a, I mean, and no matter where we got a bunch of different, I know thoughts about him.
Yeah.
But no one could take it away his cognitive skills. It sounds dismissive to say that just because he's 84,
For
but
sure,
he's just so incredibly sharp, right?
He's sharper than me, and he's probably 3 times my age.
Yeah. Well,
Nobody make a comment on that.
no.
You all
3
stay
times
silent.
would be a little excessive. But
close,
he's not that
close
old.
enough.
What is he?
84.
Yeah,
Moving on to the letters.
he could be twice your age.
That's true.
Should I punch you all in the face right now?
We got a lot of letters.
We
about
did.
him, right?
So we have a Jairan Eskandari on YouTube wrote, "What a great and unique interview, you guys. Not only reflecting on historical remarks, but his genuine narrative on a personal journey as someone who lived through all those moments." And then we have Amir Nigdel. He wrote, "Are you guys wearing masks at the round table?" Well, it's funny you bring that up.
Nick Dale. This
Dale.
guy is
He's a huge fan.
He's a huge fan, but usually writes apparently letters that have nothing to do with the content.
I know.
Just things he's thinking in his head. And no, we're not wearing masks. We're socially distanced.
Yes.
And
Well, we get
it's
tested
phase
before
3 now or something. Phase 2. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you,
so-
Amir Nick Dale.
As well, we have Jinus Family. She wrote, "First time in 40 years, I willingly listened to anything even slightly related to Iranian politics, and I actually enjoyed it. Thanks."
Oh, that's good to hear.
It's a nice comment. So, as well, this week on episode 30, we had an interview with Armenian, Iranian, American musician, songwriter, and producer Erwin Khachikian. Be honest, you're impressed that I can pronounce that. So Erwin recounts growing up as the son of a church pastor in the 1970s Tehran, working with System of a Down's Serge Tonkian, producing with Jian Ghomeshi, and finding his own solo sound. So we had a few people write on that. We have Jamie Smith on YouTube. He or she wrote...
By the way, sorry, one thing. Hey, Shaya,
Yes.
so somebody wrote to me and said, you know, have you talked to Erwin about the order in which you say he's Armenian, Iranian, American? But maybe he would, shouldn't he be saying Iranian, Armenian, American?
How does he identify? We should ask him.
Well, I know. I've got to text Erwin or if I find out. But do you know the answer to that?
No.
No, I don't either.
And I have another question. Is it?
But some people care about the order, apparently. I mean,
Probably, yeah.
Iranian, Canadian, Iranian. I guess I'm an Iranian Canadian, but
how would you
Armenian, Iranian, American seem to make sense to me.
It does. Take away the American, and what is he? He's Armenian Iranian. That's how you would start it out, and then add
or
the
is he
American.
Iranian, Armenian?
Iranian Armenian? No, because it makes sense to me the other way. Because it's within Iran, but it's a
Well,
That's
since-
right,
Smaller
because we say
cultural-
Iranian Canadian.
yes.
Yeah, but
And then break that down further, and you add Armenian,
yeah,
Iranian.
Yeah, I guess if it makes sense to you, then we gotta follow
Yeah,
suit.
exactly. I'm a master of this.
All right, sorry. Letters
Anyway.
about Erwin.
Club. And so we have Jamie Smith on YouTube wrote, "This is a style of music I've never really flirted with. Listening to Roqe means that I can be exposed to it through a familiar window." In brackets, he has Jian's fantastic journalism. "Hope you're well, dude."
That's great.
Yeah.
That's the ideal, to be introducing artists like Erwin to new folks. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that. Thank you, Jamie Smith.
Yeah, Jamie Smith.
And is it Erwin or Erwin?
It's Erwin.
Erwin.
I
it
think
is.
in North America he goes by Erwin,
Does he?
because that's how it's spelled. Erwin.
Well, he looks like Erwin, but
Erwin.
we don't have.
It's a silent W.
We don't have W, do we?
Erwin.
We can't pronounce.
Are you
double
using the Windex? We don't say Windex.
Erwin.
You know?
Window.
Oh, I'm just
Vindo.
I guess we're
Windows
just
have
supposed to
a
know.
Erwin. All right.
Well, and then we have Hesamian Music on YouTube wrote, "Jian salutes. I have memories with your song Persian Cowboy, but I didn't." What?
Yeah, I had a song called Persian
I
Cowboy.
have no idea. I have to go listen
Yeah.
to this immediately.
See me, Persian. It's
Oh,
like this kind
wow.
of
That's so
U2
funny.
like rock song called Persian Cowboy. This is like literally
Was
20
it-
years ago.
Persian
Was it a
cow?
solo one or when
Yeah,
you
no,
were
it's a
part of
solo
rock?
one.
Is
It's-
it
yeah,
country?
No, it's not. No, it's a rock song, but it's called Persian
All
Cowboy.
right, I
yeah.
have to listen to it immediately after this. Anyway, he goes on saying, but I can't find it anywhere nowadays. I guess
Yeah,
it's not that
nor could I.
popular.
I don't think I could find it.
He goes, I used to watch your music back in the days. And thank you for bringing my brother Ervin to your podcast. Ervin has helped me so much and has been a big inspiration in my music production journey. You chose the right guy. Take care, and I wish you all the best.
Nice.
Yeah, that was lovely.
Give him another a shout out. What's his name?
Hesam Hesamian.
Sounds like Hassam is a musician himself.
Yeah. He has
Hassam
music
Hessamian.
behind that.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll
and
check
then,
you out, Hassam.
Yeah, and then we have Soul Homes Property Management Team wrote, "You guys are rocking it. Thanks, Jian and Shaya." And
Did the whole property management team write that?
Was it the entire company?
It was their YouTube account.
Oh.
You smart ASS.
Oh, that's good. You see, like, even corporations are noticing us.
Right.
Well,
Reaching
not
out.
me and you, Reza.
Yeah.
We were excluded out of that.
That was
Just
thank you,
Jian and Shaya.
Nobody likes Reza.
Yeah, I guess. Well, me too. Apparently, we're not memorable.
We've got some compliments for Keon before, but nothing for you, Reza.
No, nothing.
just that one. We had that letter of the week. Remember where the guy was giving Reza a lesson on?
I know.
You can't
Only
remove
one
yourself
letter,
from politics.
and that was a hate mail.
I think we've got actually more than one
Do we?
hate mail about you.
True.
But
Mind it, keep 'em
listen,
coming,
we're
guys.
used to hate mail. It's okay. Yeah.
Anyway, so then, so going back even further to episode 22, we had the German Iranian journalist and foreign correspondent Natalie Amiri on the show, the only female international reporter permanently stationed in Iran since 2007, which is really interesting. As well, we had Ahmed Kiarostami on the show discussing continuing the legacy of his legendary filmmaker
That was
father.
one of my favorite episodes of Roqe. Natalie Amiri and Ahmed Kiarostami. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Number,
a good
what was that, 21?
It was 22.
22.
Yeah, 22.
And
so
what have people said?
we have a few people that wrote on that. We have a Farah K on YouTube wrote, "Thank you for these interesting interviews, especially the one with Ahmed Kiarostami. It took me back to my own childhood memories, as Ahmed went to a high school very close to the one I went to. And quite a few of my friends had serious crushes on him." Happy face. "Thanks again for all your hard work." That was
right.
very
Wow.
sweet.
Thank you for sharing that,
Yeah.
Farah.
And then we have a Ali Zakir on YouTube wrote, "Yet another great episode. I liked Ahmed Kiarostami's part, but loved Natalie Amiri interview as well. What a beautiful, wonderful, courageous, and brave woman. I think she answered the famous diaspora question very accurately. Persian heart and German mind. Very well said. Thank you, Jian and the entire Roqe team for such great programs. Keep up the great work and good luck. Stay safe."
Nice.
Nice,
Thank you,
nice.
Ali, and thank you, Natalie.
Yeah. And then on episode 26, we had filmmaker Babak Payomi on the show, and a few other users wrote about that. We have Ali Khalili on YouTube wrote, "First of all, I can already feel the positive energy of F2F studio interviews. I
What's
was
that?
Face to face.
I had to question it. I was like, what is that?
Well, you-
I was like, is this the name of the
Keon, you
studio?
knew that we're going to ask you what that is. Can you?
It was spelled.
All right. You
It's
wanted
not
to
my
make sure.
words.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was listening to this interview while walking in the Guftegu Park in Tehran. I'm assuming that, is that a real park, Guftegu
Yeah,
Park,
yeah,
or is
yeah.
it really?
I love
It's
it.
interesting.
So this guy's listening in Tehran.
Yeah,
Horrible,
and
but-
he goes on saying, "A very different experience compared to 17 years ago when the concept of dialogue between civilizations was initiated, and this park was made as a symbol of that with quite a lot of diversity."
Yeah,
I
during
also-
Khatami. Sorry to
Pardon
interrupt.
me? I'm not done,
I remember.
Reza.
Sorry about that.
Wait
Go
your
on.
turn.
She's still. I'm watching her read the letter F to F.
I really like that letter.
I'm reading
So-
it word for word, okay? Give me a break.
She is F to F with me
F
right
to
now.
F. I've never seen that as an acronym. Has anybody else? F to F?
But you didn't think to question it before you read it.
I did not,
Before coming
no,
in with
I
the
just-
letters.
I tried
You
to
had
not-
to do it on the air with us.
I did.
It's okay.
He goes on and says, "I also believe accommodating diversities and tolerating unpleasant but constructive feedback/opinions would be a way to go for a bright future of Iran." Well said.
So who was that?
This was Ali Khalili writing from Guftagoo Park, Tehran.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love
it
that
was-
too. Yeah.
Very sweet.
And I love that F to F interview with Babak. I really do love that having Babak Payami here.
Yeah.
And Ali Khalili in Guftagoo Park is absolutely right that there is a totally different energy. You know, we launched this show with the hope that people could be in studio, and of course it's been the time of COVID. But the
Yeah.
more we can do in here, of course, when I can look at someone rather than do the interview over a telephone, it's a
Yeah.
different animal.
When you add a face to the voice.
Were you going to say something about Guftagoo Park, Shaya?
I love Actually, I miss Guftagoo Park. Yeah,
Aw.
it's a very cute and cozy park in the beside Chamran highway.
Is it
and
west or east or which
is
part of
it
Tehran?
mostly west, but it's at the center, kind of. Yeah.
I'm not from Tehran, so I wouldn't know about it, but I'm impressed. And
I thought it was a
Right.
nickname. I can't believe that's a real name, Guftagoo Park. That's
Yeah.
adorable. And then we have a Anush Ibtikar also wrote on that same interview. He wrote, "For 30 years, I thought."
She probably,
Is it
right?
Anush?
I think it
Anush
is
is
a
a-
she. Is it?
Are we sure?
maybe it's a
I've,
unisex name.
actually
I've
it
known
could be
male
he.
Anushes. I've
But
never
be a
heard
It
he.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry I cut you off.
So he or she says, "For 30 years, I thought my English was okay until I listened to your show. It's at Shakespeare's level. Love your show. Even white people can't talk like you. This is your art." And it's so true. Jian, you make me sound like a truck driver. Nothing against truck drivers, but
My greatest aspiration is to speak the way white people do.
like Shakespeare. You know, we all have our dictionaries handy whenever Jian speaks.
I love that. That's the standard.
Do you feel
I
any
think-
progress in my English? From
Are
the
you
first
kidding?
episode
I do.
until-
I
Dude,
think so.
you were the first in the beginning. You were like literally, you know,
Yeah.
you were we were
Literally,
doing
you were
sign
miming.
No, you were speaking Farsi to me mostly. We would speak in
Yes,
Farsi
but
in the
now
beginning.
some-
Now we speak English
Yeah,
and
true.
Farsi. It's nice.
Yes.
Has my Farsi improved?
Not
Is it
at all.
better?
Oh, not at all. You
Dude, your
have
Farsi's gotten worse.
I've learned kola cap, so there we go.
moved the
Yeah,
needle.
that's gotten worse. Khop, look at that. We have the letter of the
Letter of the
week.
week.
Woo! So this week it goes to a Ramak Milani. It's a he, right? Ramak?
No,
Ramak.
I don't think
It's
so.
a
It's a she?
I think Ramak
Yeah.
is a she.
Ramak is a she. So she emailed us saying, "Hello, Jian and
Your
the
Farsi's getting a lot better.
Anyway. Ramak emailed us saying, "Hello, Jian and the Roqe team. Thank you for all you do at Roqe. I'm enjoying every interview and getting to learn about these amazing and inspiring Iranians. I've started listening to Roqe from the beginning, and I just finished the episode with Chef Salimi on. His laughs were contagious, and he seemed to be such a delightful person. I was jogging while listening to him and laughing every time he laughed. That made me look like a lunatic. Thanks, Chef. That was one of the happiest jogs I've ever done. My sister lives in Vancouver, and hopefully I'll go visit her after the pandemic is over. I'll make sure to stop by Mr. Salimion's restaurant/hotel and try his das Pocht. Khaste nabashid, and keep up the good work."
Nice.
That was so heartwarming. I
That's
love
great.
that.
So many
beautiful.
people in parks and jogging while listening to Roqe.
That's a very efficient way to listen
Nice
to.
shout out
yeah.
to Chef Hamid. Thank you. Who was it?
It was Ramak Milani.
Ramak Jan, merci. Thank you
Yeah.
for that so much, that letter of the week. Thank you, the fabulous Kian, for all of your work here.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Captain Reza,
Thank you.
Groovy Shaya. Thank you to the entire Little Roqe team that helps put this together each week. Susan, Panta, Mehrdad, Mohammed, and the gang here. And to all of you guys out there who are helping us, supporting us, spreading the word, giving us suggestions of how we can keep the lights on and keep this thing going and grow it. So we thank you all. You can contact us at info@roqemedia.com. You can find us, as I said earlier in the show, on Instagram at Roqe Media, and our website, roqemedia.com. I want to go out on some music by Farhad from 1977 and a song, lyrics by Iraj Janati Atai, who we've spoken about a couple of times in the last few weeks. We've got to get him on the show. This is a song called Sakh Mizun Bashi.
تو فکر یک سقفم، یک سقف بی روزن، یک سقف پا بر جا، محکم تر از آهن، سقفی که تن بوشه هراس ما باشه، تو سردی شبها لباس ما باشه. سقفی اندازه قلب من و تو، واسه لمس تپش دل و پسی، برای شرم لطیف آینه ها، واسه پیچیدن بوی اطلسی، زیر این سقف با تو از گل، از شب و ستاره میگم، از تو با از خواستن تو میگم و دوباره میگم، زندگیمو زیر این سقف با تو اندازه میگیرم، گم میشم تو معنی تو، معنی تازه میگیرم. سقفمون افسوس و افسوس، تن ابر آسمونه، یه افق بی نهایت، کمترین فاصله مونه، تو فکر یک سقفم، یک سقف رویایی، سقفی برای ما حتی مقوایی، تو فکر یک سقفم، یک سقف بی روزن، سقفی برای عشق، برای تو با من. سقفی اندازه قلب من و تو، واسه لمس تپش دل و پسی، برای شرم لطیف آینه ها، واسه پیچیدن بوی اطلسی، زیر این سقف اگه باشه میپیچه عطر تن تو، لختی پنجره هاشو میپوشونه پیرهن تو، زیر این سقف خوب عطره خود فراموشی بپاشیم، آخر قصه بخوابیم، اول ترانه باشیم. سقفمون افسوس و افسوس، تن ابر آسمونه، یه افق بی نهایت، کمترین فاصله مونه، تو فکر یک سقفم.